Yeah.
My name is Markus, and I'm going to be talking about the physiology of training for resistance training. So, hold on. So a little background and summary of it. I have a couple of points here. So for muscle adaptation, for resistance training, there's hypertrophy, which is just resistance training that leads to an increase in muscle size due to the enlargement of the muscle fibers. And this occurs through a synthesis of new proteins and the addition of microfibrils and within the muscle cells. So overall, hypertrophy is just the increase of muscle size whenever you work it out through resistance training. Fiber type transformation. Also in muscle adaptation, there can be a shift in muscle fiber types, typically from muscle fiber type 2X to 2A, which is just meaning that for the 2X it's fast twitch, and then 2A is just more fatigue resistance fast twitch fibers are able to go for longer. And then for neural adaptations, we have motor unit recruitments, which improves the ability to recruit motor units, which are just groups of muscle fibers activated by a single motor neuron. And it leads to a more efficient and powerful muscle contraction. You also have synchronization, which is enhanced synchronization of motor units firing, which improves the coordination and timing of muscle contractions. And then you also have an increased firing rate, a rate at which motor neurons fire increase, contributing to greater force production. So you also have hormonal responses. There's anabolic hormones, which respond to resistance trainings, which cause the release of these hormones, such as testosterone and growth factor, and insulin. And then there's also cortisol that gets released from resistance training, which has an acute increase during resistance training, which helps mobilize energy stores. And then you also have metabolic adaptations, which increase enzyme activity. Resistance training enhances the activity of enzymes involved in energy production, improving the muscle's ability to generate ATP through anaerobic pathways. Then you also have an improved glycogen storage, so muscles increase their capacity to store glycogen, which is crucial for sustained energy during high-intensity exercise. You also have an enhanced lactate threshold, which is the ability to tolerate and clear lactate. That improves, so you allow for higher intensity efforts without fatigue. So if you're in the lab, we did a lactate threshold lab, and the lactate increased as you went along, but as you do resistance training more, that lactate threshold gets higher and you're able to go for longer. So that's pretty cool. So general principles and concepts of resistance training. So you have types of resistance. There's body weight exercise such as squats or push-ups or even pull-ups and stuff. And then you also have equipment-based exercises, which is bench press or barbells or anything with weight really. And you can also use resistance bands and stuff. So yeah, that's types of resistance. And then you also have principles of resistance training, another concept of resistance training. This includes the overload principle, which basically means that in order to improve your performance as well as your strength and stuff, you need to push it to its metabolic capacity. So that metabolic capacity needs to be applied in order for you to get stronger, and for hypertrophy to be applied for your muscles to get bigger. So the muscle must be challenged to perform at a level greater than it's accustomed to. So basically means until failure, overload your muscles. Next. So then you have the specific, the SAID principle, which basically just applies to yourself. It's a specific adaptation to impose demand, so depending on who you are, your background and stuff. So The training must be specific to the individual's goals and the type of performance desired. So whether they're like pushing for endurance, strength, or build or whatever, they need to like do it according to their own self. So that's that principle. And then the next principle is reversibility principle, which basically means that like whenever you don't work out, the stuff can like be reversed. So we have like a graph here that like shows that whenever you're training, it like goes up, and then since you're now, it's all the way, okay, what do I even say? Okay, you're at 100% here whenever you're trained, you're 100% at your peak, and then if you go a while without training, it's gonna go down and you're not gonna be as strong. And then right as you start to retrain again, it's able to go up faster because your body's already like used to it. It's like its muscle memory is like, it like kicks in, and so like you're able to get back faster, but you still like degress than what you're used to. So it basically means that the adaptive changes in the body system, such as increase of endurance, are transient unless regularly used or maintained through continuous training. Okay. Yeah, and that also shows that like the active muscle will become inactive and then it will shrink and be less strong. Okay, now muscular adaptations. So there's stabilization, which enhances joint stability and muscular endurance exercises. Doing that often involve balance and core engagement, such as like planks, single leg movements, different things like that. It'll definitely help with that. And then you also have muscular endurance, which is just the ability to like sustain the repeated muscle contractions over time. So it typically involves like higher repetitions with lower weights, so like 8 to 12, 6 to 12 like reps. Yeah, I'm trying to think. And here's like kind of a graph that kind of shows that. It's kind of small, but it basically is saying that like once you do like resistance training, it's able to go up to a higher, you're able to progress more. But like if you just rely on your neural like ability, then it's hard to explain, but yeah. So hypertrophy, like we talked about before, is just the increase in muscle size due to your resistance training, and it's achieved through like moderate to heavy weights with moderate repetitions. So like this process kind of shows like the difference between resistance training and endurance training, and I kind of like to show like how it went all the way to muscle trophy, and then endurance training like doesn't necessarily lead to that. So I just thought that was kind of cool. Yeah. And then strength is just the ability to exert the movement, exert maximal force against the resistance, which involves lifting heavy weights with low repetitions, so 1 to 5 reps. So if you want like bigger muscles, you probably should do like 6 to 12 or whatever. But if you want like strength, probably doing heavier with less repetitions. And for power, it's the ability to produce maximum force in the shortest amount of time. It combines strength and speed, and is often involving explosive movements like plyometrics and like Olympic lifts and stuff. So like if you're a weightlifter, this kind of applies to you. Yeah. And then you also have acute training variables, which include your sets and reps, tempo, intensity, and rest periods. So the sets and reps is just the number of cycles and repetitions performed. Varying sets and reps can target different fitness goals, such as like what we talked about on the last slide, like strength and hypertrophy and endurance. So like depending on the amount of reps you do is like where you want to be at. So if you want to be like stronger, you just do different reps and sets depending on like where you want to be and according to your like goals and stuff. And then tempo is like the speed at which the exercises are performed. So the manipulating the tempo can increase time under tension and enhance muscle growth. So in the gym, a lot of the time people like, they'll go, and then as they get to like failure sometimes, it'll just be like they go slower so that they're able to increase their strength and muscle growth. So they just go slower to like increase that. And then rest periods, so like depending on the intensity that you do and like the stuff that you're doing, the rest periods are going to be different. So it's just the duration of rest between sets and exercises. So like whenever you have shorter rest periods, which are like maybe a minute long, it's used for endurance and like hypertrophy things that you're doing. So like lighter intensity, you're able to like rest for shorter amount of time before going back, and then you'll have like a longer rest period, and that's used for like strength and power training. So like just a higher intensity, you're going to be using more rest to prevent injury and all that and increase growth. And then the intensity is just the level of resistance used. So most of the time it's expressed as a percentage of a 1 rep max. So like say we're using like bench, like you're gonna wanna accustom it to like whatever your 1 rep max like bench is, depending on what you're doing that day. Like if I'm doing like 5 to 6 reps, and like for heavier, then I'm gonna do like 80 to 90% of like my, actually you wouldn't do 5 to 6, that would be like 3 or something. But yeah, you want to just do it based on your like intensity and what your like goals are, whether you're aiming for like muscle growth or just strength overall. So higher intensity, like 80 to 90% of your 1 rep max is used for strength. And then moderate intensity, which is like 60 to 75% of your 1 rep max, is used for your hypertrophy / muscle growth. And then I like this graph because it kind of shows like how different intensities like show what you're doing. Like I don't know how to describe it. Like the anaerobic zone, you're using 80 to 90% of your max, and so it's like you're using your non-oxygen muscle process, I forget what they're called. And then as you move down, it's like fat burning zone. So like the higher the intensity, like you're using more carbs, and then the lower the intensity, the more you're using your fat and stuff. So like this would be like glycolysis, and that'd be like Krebs. So yeah, it just depends on what you're doing. Okay. I also liked this graph. It wouldn't like let me like change the size of it, so I had to like make it its own thing. So it kind of just shows like the different reps and sets you have to do for the different type of stuff that you want. So like if you want like hypertrophy / muscle growth, you want to do like that many reps and like 3 to 5 sets, and the intensity is low and the volume is very high. So it just depends on what you want. So I really like this graph because I might use it. Yeah. So application. So for strength training, it can low-key be used for like anybody. So it's like mostly like important for like athletes. With that, the purpose of it for athletes is to like enhance their performance and to increase their strength, and also increase their power and increase their endurance. So that will help them with whatever they may be doing, whether it's like sprinting or weightlifting or football, anything that they're doing. And then it can also be used for patients. So like anybody with injuries or anything, they're able to use resistance training to like for rehabilitation. So it can help them improve mobility and manage chronic conditions. So examples of that are like people recovering from surgery, or those with arthritis or osteoporosis or cardiovascular diseases even. It can help with that, and through like rehabilitation process, they're able to like become more healthy and cure those things that they're dealing with. And then it can also just be used for like the general population, because it's just really healthy to be exercising as much as you can. Of course, you like need rest too, but it's important. So they're able to improve their overall health through it and maintain fitness, and they can also like prevent age-related muscle loss through it. So, and then people that might use it in the general population is just like anybody, like adults, seniors, even like children, but like under adult supervision, because they're not like supposed to be like using insane weights whenever they're that young. And then practitioners involved include like personal trainers, and they design and supervise personalized resistance training programs to help those like increase their strength. So it's like they basically just help with like all of those, mostly athletes in the general population, to increase their overall health and endurance. And then also physical therapists can help in this, and they can develop rehabilitation programs and they can also incorporate like resistance training to help them with their injuries, like I was talking about before, so they can help with the patients with their injuries and different things by using resistance training. And then strength and conditioning coaches can also use resistance training to help with their patients or athletes, to train their athletes to improve performance through resistance training, like I was saying. And then exercise physiologists are able to use resistance training as well in their like research and stuff. They're able to study and apply the physiological responses to resistance training. So I thought that was cool. So an overall summary, we talked about the types of resistance, so like body weight and even like using things like bands and dumbbells and all that are those types of resistance. We talked about the principles such as overload, so going at your maximum capacity in order to increase endurance and hypertrophy and power and strength. Then we talked about the SED, which is according to yourself and like what you need to do and what your goals are and what that workout looks like for you and according to your goals and stuff. And then we also talked about the reversibility principles, which is just how if you don't exercise, it will be reversed and you will become weaker and look smaller. We also talked about muscular adaptations, such as hypertrophy, increasing your strength and volume and hypertrophy. We also talked about acute training variations, and we talked about who can use it, such as athletes, patients, and just the general population. Anybody can use it for their own personal benefit and their own health. And then we also talked about practitioners involved, such as physical therapists and exercise physiologists. They all use it for different things. And yeah. So now we're gonna have a mini quiz. So first question is, what is the primary benefit of resistance training for athletes? You don't have to answer, but the answer is to improve cardiovascular endurance. I don't think that's the answer. I'm pretty sure it's B. I'm pretty sure it's B. I accidentally put the circle on the wrong one. But it's to enhance performance and increase strength. Sorry about that. Okay. So the next one is, what principle states that training must be to the individual's goal? And it kind of says it in the thing, because it's like you specify to the person. So the SED principle would be the answer. And then the next one, which acute training variable involves the speed at which exercises are performed? And that would be tempo. So it's the only one that would really make sense. And then the next one is, what is the primary purpose of resistance training for patients? And this one is to improve mobility and manage chronic conditions for patients, and also just for everyone. Who is most likely to design and supervise personalized resistance training programs? A personal trainer. Yeah. These are my sources, and that's all. Thanks for watching.